Hello and welcome to the Duquesne Sports Pregame Show here on DSTV. I'm Jack Morgan. Alongside me, Dylan Pfister, and the Duquesne Dukes men's basketball team is going to Dayton for a big-time matchup against the Dayton Flyers in a game where they need a win. They lost a multitude of games in a row. They got back in the win column against Loyola Chicago. However, they're going to look to extend that win streak tonight. And Dylan, I'm going to bring you in here, just kind of discuss a Duquesne rocky season it's really been.
Yeah, Jack, you touched on that losing streak. Duquesne started conference play 4-1. They now sit 5-6. They did have a bounce back win, like you mentioned, against Loyola Chicago, so that was big for them. But you're right, Jack, it's been rocky. Duquesne sits 10-14. They're 9th in the conference. Definitely not an ideal start to this season, but with that win against Loyola Chicago, they'll be looking to make some noise for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Duquesne led by a couple of guys at the top. Trey Dinkins, Cam Crawford, some veteran leadership from Rozier in that guard position. Down low, they've had a little bit of trouble. Obviously, Netchus has played the small forward position. You got guys like Dixon, Chavi Beret, who's, as we know, still injured as far as we know, and no real updates there. They've been without DeMichael for a while. There's still no real word on when he's coming back. It just feels like there hasn't been a good cohesive starting lineup, to be honest. I feel like there hasn't been a group that has started for all the games in the season, which can kind of hurt a team once you get to March.
Yeah, that feeling is definitely there, Jack. You touched on Duquesne's struggles with the big men, and that's something we've kind of been talking about the last couple weeks, having that solid foundation down low. But we did see a big performance from Dave Dixon in that game against Loyola Chicago. Just short of a double-double. He actually had 10 points, 9 rebounds, so big for him. But Trey Dinkins also with a big game, along with Jakub Netchus, like you mentioned. So it is important for a team like this that doesn't have that solid foundation game in and game out, the same rotation. It's really important for them to build up consistency, all around the roster, which they were able to do in this Loyola Chicago game. They actually had 5 players score 9+ points in that game. That's something they haven't done at all in conference play. Haven't done it since way back in December. So that was big for them. That's a big step forward in this team, showing that they don't necessarily need that one star, that 1-2 punch every week. They can win in a multitude of ways, and they can win with contributions from everybody on the team.
Yeah, so Dayton and Duquesne, last time they faced off was at the Coop, and Duquesne fell, and that was a sort of a slide for them in a sense. They had trouble stopping. Enoch Cheeks, who had 23 in that game. You also had Malachi Smith didn't really do much, but you also had the problem with Latong down low. Javon Bennett put up 16. You were able to slow down Nate Santos a little bit, but he still put up 9, and they just got some good contributions from about 9 guys on that team. And they were running deep on that night, and they played some pretty good basketball. How does Duquesne kind of stop that, and who do they need to stop?
Yeah, obviously it did not go the way Duquesne wanted that first time around. They were not even really losing in a way that they would want to. They lost by 20 points, and now they have to go to Dayton's house. They have to play the Flyers in Dayton, and we know about that stadium, famously double the capacity of the next biggest stadium in the A10. The Flyers run deep at home, 13-2 in their stadium this season. So it's going to be a tough task for Duquesne, but like I mentioned, they're going to need numbers from players all over the roster. They're going to need contributions from guys that maybe haven't shown up all year. But where I think Duquesne can really get Dayton would be in the three-point shooting. Now, we've talked a lot about, Jack, obviously the struggles Duquesne has had shooting this year, but three-pointers, they actually fare pretty decently. They're 5th in the A10, 35% from the three-point line. Obviously, we know that's Dayton's specialty for sure. So if they're going to beat the Flyers, the Dukes are going to need to go toe-to-toe with shooting.
Last time that Duquesne beat Dayton in Dayton, Ohio, at that stadium, you talked pretty highly about, and you're absolutely right on every one of those points. It was the 2011-2012 season, so that That was February 1st, 2012. Just past the anniversary of that. So we're looking at 13 years and some odd days since Duquesne has gotten a win in Dayton. And overall, they are 3-17 on the road against Dayton. And they've had some troubles in the past on the road. So Duquesne, the road record this year, remind me, 1-5, correct?
Correct. 1-5 on the road.
It's not a great recipe overall, if I might say.
It certainly isn't, which is 100% why I'm going to double down on Duquesne needing to have an amazing offensive performance, not just in shooting, but in rebounding as well. Because that's another stat where Duquesne has been sneaky good this year, 4th in the conference in offensive rebounding, and Dayton is 14th in defensive rebounding. So Duquesne needs to capitalize on their shooting. They need to put up a lot of shots from 3, keep doing what they've been doing all year and stay consistent. And they need to attack that rim when they're on offense.
Yeah, and they have had a really good effort the past few games with rebounding, and it seems like almost like a weak spot that they can take advantage. Now, obviously, last year, if you guys remember, there was a guy named Ron Holmes, did a lot of the heavy lifting down low. Now that he's gone, they've had to kind of replace that spot, and it hasn't been as easy, but they've excelled in other areas to get the job done. They're 7-5 in conference. Now, honestly, for Dayton standard, this is not a season that they expected to go this way, especially when in non-conference you play as well as you did. They went 10-2? Yeah, 10-2 in conference, or 10-3 rather in conference. They had big wins. They beat Marquette. They beat UConn. They played it close with number 12 UNC, which they might have dropped out of the rankings, but still a ranked game at the time. And number 5 Iowa State. They had a heck of a non-conference record, but they have lost some brutal games in A-10 play. One of them was to GW, and we actually talked about that the last time we did the pregame show for a Duquesne-Dayton game. But now, since then, they lost to St. Bonaventure, and they didn't just lose, they lost by 22. And then their last loss was pretty well known on Friday night to a VCU team that walked right into UD Arena and took it to the Flyers, especially at the end. A nice come-from-behind win. They did get a win against Fordham on Wednesday. Duquesne with a week of rest now. And maybe that helps them kind of reset things.
It definitely was an interesting game against Fordham because, like you mentioned, Jack, slow start to the season or to conference play for the Flyers. Definitely something they're not used to. But they did have their season high 93 points against Fordham. Went into the half, tied at 48. And they just took off from there, winning 93-76, showing a lot of promise. Malachi Smith had a great game. You mentioned he wasn't fantastic against the Dukes last time out. Javon Bennett had a fantastic game. He put up 16 points. Another one there, Bennett, very scary, a sneaky flyer who could have a big game against Duquesne. So while, yes, they haven't had the best start to conference play, they're getting hot at the right time, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to move into our players to watch without further ado. And for Duquesne, we'll start with them first. I don't think we've started with Duquesne in a while this year. So we're switching it up now because Duquesne needs to switch up their road mojo. Who's going to get it done for Duquesne?
If Duquesne's going to win, I'm going to triple down on that offensive game plan, Jack. Trey Dinkins needs to have a game. He's been that offensive vocal point all season for the Dukes. He needs 20-plus accompanied by maybe a 15 bomb from Cam Crawford. But more importantly, Trey Dinkins needs to have a big game for the Dukes to upset the Flyers.
I'm actually going to call a little bit of an audible. And I did tell you before this I was going to go with Malachi Smith. I lied. I'm going Nate Santos because once again, Duquesne down low is going to have someone match up with Nate Santos. A couple of people around Duquesne thought it would be Corbett who was going to be matched up with Santos. And you know what happened? Corbett couldn't do much of anything. And he had one of his worst games as a Duke. It's going to be the same situation again. And Nate Santos can play well offensively. He can hold his own defensively. And he's going to have to continue to do that. He might need a little help with Corbett down low. But he's going to be at the epicenter of what Duquesne wants to do. And they want to take advantage of the size they have, which is not usual for Duquesne against Dayton. given they had to go up against a guy like Deron Holmes last year. So that's my guy to watch for Duquesne. We're going to move over to Dayton, and he got a bunch of picks he can make. Excuse me. I went with Dayton, didn't I?
I believe you did, but we can do a little jumping around here. I can get into my Dayton pick. You talked about Malachi Smith, Jack. I can get into him a little bit if you're not going to talk about him.
Yeah.
This guy leads the team in assists. Not only does he lead the team, he's accounted for 1/3 of all the assists on the team this season. He is distributing the ball at a fantastic rate, and he's going to have to stay on top of that against Duquesne. He's going to give his players the opportunity, try to go toe-for-toe shooting and outscore the Dukes.
No, ironically, I did tell you that we usually start with Dayton, or the opponents in this sense. I'm going to jump back to Duquesne. I'm going to tell you that Dave Dixon needs to have a big game. Me and Nick did do a stream for the last road game, and we felt like Dixon played a little better. He played better against Loyola Chicago with a really rotating door of big men down low at the center position. You need one of them to take charge and grab that position. You've been waiting all year for it, and really in a big game against a formidable foe and what looks like a superior foe in Dayton over the last 10 years. Be a signature win for the program if they could get it done. And I think what has to happen is they have to dominate down low. So guys like Corbett, Dixon, even Netchus, who has the size advantage, they got to dominate down low. I think it starts with someone in particular down low at the center position, and I think it's going to be Dixon if Duquesne wins this game. Well, however, that's the only problem. They got to win this game, and I'm pretty sure the last couple of times, I'll think we picked Duquesne. Are you going to pick Duquesne this time?
Unfortunately for the Dukes fans out there, I'm not picking Duquesne. It's going to be a Flyers win, but not by as much as the first time around. A little bit of a blowout by 20 points in that first matchup. Things can be a little bit closer. The Flyers have been averaging about 75 points per game. Duquesne's defense has been very nice, especially towards this later part of the season. I think they hold them to that 75, and I think Duquesne puts up 70 of their own, taking the Flyers by 5.
Now, personally, I would agree with you in the sense that it'll be closer because obviously you play a team twice. You're going to play them better the second time, usually. Now, the only problem is when you're now on the road for the second game against a team like Dayton in an environment like that. That's tough. That's tough. I know, and it's Drew Joyce's first year as a head coach, and yeah, he hasn't had many chances to play teams twice. He had a chance to play St. Joe's twice, and they actually lost that game. So I'm not exactly confident in Duquesne going into Dayton to get a win. I think it was very important they beat Loyola Chicago because their schedule coming up is not very favorable. But I don't think they come away with a win in this one. Obviously, Duquesne fans are going to hope that I'm wrong. Right there with you. But I just don't think that Duquesne is going to have enough to get it done. I don't think it'll be as close as you said, unfortunately. I think it actually ends up being a 15-point Dayton win, whether that snowballs towards the end. Duquesne has a good effort for about 35 minutes, like they did literally last year, or not. That's still yet to be foreseen. But I think that Duquesne loses this one by 15. They're going to have a big one on Wednesday against Fordham to get back in the win column. We'll see about that one, though. That'll do it for the Duquesne Sports Pregame Show. For Dylan Fisser, I'm Jack Morgan saying so long and enjoy the game.